Welcome to the Life's Better podcast, where we say life is so much better with God, community, and purpose. I'm Jonathan Gleason. This is Josh Doolin, as always. And today we're going to be talking primarily to parents, but I think this is a great topic for anyone who works with students, whether it's a teacher, youth pastor. This is just one of those topics that I think will be helpful. But because we're in the middle of, in between Mother's Day and Father's Day, we thought, let's talk about something that might be helpful for parents. Specifically, we're going to be looking at where do you draw the line between compassion and consequences.
Yeah. I'm glad you were here, because if it were just me, every parent would be like,
Josh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
No, this guy works with your students. He knows how he's seen it done well, probably, and seen it maybe done not so well. So we're going to talk about that a bit. But before we do, we're going to play a little game called One Up, because Josh and I are going to try to one up each other when it comes to consequences, maybe punishments that we've had growing up, maybe even recently. But first question, we're going to try to one up each other. Your parents, what was their go-to punishment or way of kind of getting you in line when you were a kid?
Yeah. So the biggest one was getting sent to my room. If we were being mean to each other, because I had a little sister. If we were being mean to each other, it was typically you got to go to your room for a while. No playing game. Like if they hear anything going on, like they're gonna come in the room and like discipline you even more.
What were you supposed to do in your room then?
Just sit and think about what you've done.
So you're on the edge of your bed.
Yep.
Just chilling.
Probably
saying,
crying.
I hate my sister even more now.
That's a really big thing. Okay. But it always ended with we had to come together and talk about what we've done, which is like the worst. Like you never want to do that. Like, Josh, why did you do this? And it's like, because I was angry. Like, And then the other like fast and easy one was a good swat on the tail.
Okay. Now is it just kind of like one quickie?
It depended on how bad I had been, but that one was not used as often. Okay. Because I think they realized that one didn't really affect my behavior as much as the taking me out of what I wanted to do and putting me in my room and making me bored.
Sure. All right.
What about you?
My folks, they were all about the corporal punishment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely spanking. My family had a really large green plastic spoon.
Okay.
And it just had all kinds of whip to it. And so I remember even as I got a little older and more defiant, like, that's not going to hurt me anymore. Like, I remember my mom moving from the bottom to the bottom of my legs, like right here. And that just, so stung. It was like, okay, it still hurts, Mom,
Yeah.
But that was the go-to punishment, for sure.
Okay.
Who had it worse?
I think yours was more painful. Mine was just more drawn out.
Sure.
So I don't know. I'll give it to you. Give it to you.
More physical pain. All right.
Yeah, those are always the stories, right? Like everybody's like, "Oh, well, my mom used this thing," and
Never got a belt. I don't think my dad ever did a belt. In fact, out of the two, if I'm honest, I wanted Dad to give me the spanking. He was a little kinder when it came to the force involved, which was not the typical stereotype. But
Grandma always threatened the fly swatter, but I don't think I ever got it. It was just the fear of the fly swatter that I remember. But no, it never happened. So
as soon as Josh goes over to Grandma's, he takes that fly swatter, hides
it somewhere.
Grandma's never going to be able to use this on me. All right, how about this one? When you were a teen, what was your parents' go-to punishment?
Yeah, so just like slowly over time, it seemed, because I was the first child, it seemed like they evolved the original punishment that they saw worked on me, which was to make me bored. And so as a teen, like I had a lot of like friends, I had video games, I had different things I enjoyed doing, and so those would just get taken away. Phone taken away. And it wouldn't be for a very long time because they would notice that, he very quickly is changing his behavior if we even just threaten to take it away. And, we talked about this beforehand. I think a big one for me was my parent, like, especially my dad. If he showed any signs of being disappointed in me at all, like, I was devastated.
Dad.
I was devastated. My mom, she's a little more fiery. And we would argue openly, but and I always knew that was going to end with us reconciling and stuff.
Okay.
But if Dad stepped in and he was mad at me, like I melted, because it was rare,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was my punishments.
Yeah, mine was similar. If there was something I would really wanted, maybe a restriction from that. But the one that stands out to me was, it was more in middle school than maybe my high school years, but it happened a few times in my high school years. I had to, for any infraction, it was typically a school infraction, I had to weed for an hour. So if I had multiple situations, and it was at the church, and so the church had a ton of weed that needed to get done, and so for a solid hour, I'd be out there picking weeds. I remember there was a guy who was a part of our worship team at the church, and sometimes he would be there, practicing, and he'd come out and be like, "Oh, Jonathan, what'd you do this time?" It was like, "Oh, yeah." So it was like shame on top of that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was mine. I don't know.
So you got pretty good at
weeding?
Yard work.
I'm pretty good at weeding. I don't want to weed, but I'm pretty good. I can get things at the root. And when I see other people like not getting it at the root, it's like, what's wrong with you? That thing's gonna grow up in like 2 seconds. You gotta get it at the root. But I don't want to do it. No. I don't know. Who gets the point on that one?
I don't know, man.
We're gonna tie on that one.
Okay, we'll tie. I feel kind of lame because we're supposed to one up each other, but like
yeah,
I'm not gonna make anything up.
It's pretty similar. Yeah. Okay. How about this one? What has been the hardest or maybe most traumatic consequence that you faced from a poor life choice?
So, okay. I have two, because one, it was like, I was in college, so like it wasn't my parents like doing this to me.
Yeah.
They definitely let me sit in it and like figure it out on my own, but like that was a major traumatic experience that I realized, I gotta grow up here.
Yeah.
But the other one, I'm gonna bring up the one with my parent first.
Okay.
I think it was in 6th grade, so like still very young, and I was very nerdy, and I was very, very introverted at the and granted, I don't think that people change necessarily. I was extroverted. I was just very shy. Had a lot of issues and like all that stuff. But I kept to myself, and there was this kid who was kind of a bully who was picking on me because that sounds extremely nerdy, I was winning this chance out of all of the kids in our grade to go to this competition that was like history based or whatever.
That's cool.
And we had already gone through like the first part of the competition to like decide who was going to go and represent our class. And this kid was in second, and he wanted me to purposely miss questions the next day so that he could go. And he had like grabbed some of the like drawings that I had been working on, was threatening to like rip them up in front of me, was doing this in front of all of my like classmates. So I was really embarrassed. And I had never hit a kid before, but I just reared back and like slapped him across the face.
Wow.
Shocked everyone in the room, shocked myself even. And then he was going to return the favor, and I like tried to dodge, and he accidentally cut my eye. I go home, I lie about what happened.
Nice.
I told them that, my friend accidentally like hurt my eye. I get to stay home the next day because like I had to go to the doctor to get it checked because it was a scratched cornea. And my mom gets a call from the principal because all of the kids at school started talking about how I got in a fight with this other kid.
Man.
And so what was interesting though was that night my parents didn't tell me that they knew. But the guilt of like knowing that I had lied to them weighed on me. And I think in the middle of the night, like I had already been sent to bed. They were watching TV on the couch. I come running in crying, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, this is the truth.
Really?
And I told them, and they let me sit in it. Like, they were like, this is, like, the principal, all of them have heard the story. Mm-hmm. And apparently they told my parents, they were like, because they knew I was a good kid. They loved my parents. They were like, we don't really, like, we feel like he scratched his eye. Like, we don't want to punish him. Like, this kid is a jerk. Like he kind of, like, even the teacher in the room was like, I like that Josh did that. Like, but my parents, they had a hard stance on, no, he did something wrong. He needs to be punished for it. So I still got, I think I got out of school suspension for a day for fighting. And so, like, they let me sit in that, and they were like, this is the consequence. Okay. And I thought it was, looking back, I'm glad, because it's like, I have a pretty hard stance because of them on fighting
Sure.
In the same way. So
Yeah.
that was my kid one.
Yeah, I don't have a specific story of, a traumatic, hey, this is what happened. I mean, I probably could, but maybe I don't want to share all the details for a podcast. But I think probably the consequences that have been the hardest for me is any time that my poor choices have led to a broken relationship. So maybe breaking trust with somebody because of dumb things I've done, or they've done, and then I've retaliated, and then the relationship is never the same since. Those are always the hardest to sit in that, and you just have to deal with, no, that's the consequence.
Yeah.
And probably reconciliation and going back to the way it was, it's probably not, it's not going to happen here. And you like you said, you got to sit in that one and hopefully not make the same mistake.
Yeah. No, those are always the toughest moments because the way you react is important. But if you, even if you realize you've done wrong, even though you've apologized, knowing I can't fix what I've broken is a tough but important lesson I think everybody needs to learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I'm going to give you the point on that one because there was also a scratch cornea involved. And you just have
I have so
details.
many of those stories, though. My eye has been scratched way too many times, so I'm
But you
looking
still have
at stuff.
20/20 vision, right?
I do. These have
you do.
healed themselves a million times.
All right, last one here. Outside of, obviously Jesus stepping in and saving you from your sin, what is your best get out of jail free card experience? You deserve something, and grace was extended.
Yeah, so this one was my very first wreck I ever had.
Wow, okay. I've got a similar
Really? Okay.
direction.
I think I was 17 and I was driving to school, and there's a stop sign by a major, it's 151. So if you're in Lawrenceburg, you know what I'm talking about. And so people go pretty fast there. I had stopped at that stop sign, but I had apparently not stopped soon enough. So the nose of my car was just out in the in the major road, and a lady comes through and hits the front end of my vehicle. And it does. I barely feel it because it rips the front bumper off my car.
Oh, wow.
And she obviously had damage, and I see her pull off to the side up here. And I told my dad this later. I was like, there was a genuine thought of, I could flee right now. I could probably get away. She doesn't know who I am. She probably has no idea what my car exactly looks like. She didn't see my license plate. But I sat there for about a second. I was like, no, I gotta face this. So I turned and I go in, I park, and she's just livid, really angry with me. She's on her way to work, she's gonna be late for this important thing, blah, 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 blah. I'm terrified, I don't know what to do. I call my dad. He is already in Shelbyville at work, and he drives all the way back, helps me deal with the issue, helps me calm her down, and then ends up, because I'm 17, I think there was a matter of hey, you're gonna work this this debt off, but they paid for it for me, which was a huge
Did
weight
you work
off
it off?
my. I mean, here's the thing, and I know that parents do this. Parents are you're gonna pay us back, but they're not really. You're gonna make them do some chores for a year. But even those chores aren't going to be enough to pay off. That monetarily wise, that you're going to take the hit. So I know that my parents.
And that year really was 2 months.
They
forgot about it.
Yeah. So I consider that a pretty big piece of grace because he could have said, "I'm at work. You got to deal with this."
The way Josh is telling the story, my front end bumper was just a little bit over the line. It had to have been considerably over the line for her to hit that thing.
I don't know, and I don't want to place blame on her at all, but there was no one to the left, in that
she
left
had
lane.
no business being as close to you as she did, even if you were over the line.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like that to me. I mean, you try to avoid hitting people.
Yeah.
So whether they're in your way or not,
there's a chance. She was a busy businesswoman. She might have been on the phone or had it. There's a chance that she just didn't see me. But I'll be honest. She was going by. I was there. She hit me. So I will take the blame on that.
No, she had just visited Sonic. A tot had fallen down. She was reaching to grub that tot, and she blamed it on you. That's the real story. Mine's similar. So, senior year of high school, I'm in a parking lot, and it's rainy. there's a lot of traffic going on. I'm trying to get out, and it's just a lot of other people trying to get get out of their spots at the same time. And so I have to negotiate kind of this weird tight spot, and I realize, okay, I can't back out now. I got to wait. But then I forgot that I'd already cranked my tires in a certain direction. So by the time it cleared, I just think I'm going to back out straight, and I just sideswiped the guy next to me. And so immediately I'm like, I guess I got to write this guy a note because he's not here, and I don't want a hit and run situation. So I'm actually getting a piece of paper. I'm trying to formulate my words. I remember the paper is on my steering wheel, and I'm like, oh, this is really messy. And how do you spell this? I'm trying to. Meanwhile, the guy, the owner, shows up, and I'm not mentally prepared for a face-to-face confession. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, he's here. But I wanted to just leave the note, and then we could talk about it later on the phone. And I just let him pull out and leave.
Oh man.
Meanwhile, I didn't realize that somebody had observed the whole thing, tracked that guy down in the parking lot, gave him my license plate information, and I get a phone call saying, "Hey, you're in big trouble. This is like a misdemeanor felony. I don't even know what it was, but like a hit and run situation." And I'm like, I just panicked. So I told the story. The insurance got involved. I don't even know how this worked itself out. I talked to the guy on the phone, and I think he just let it all go.
Wow.
I mean, major damage on his side of his car, but I don't remember the insurance or having to pay the deductible or any of that. He just, I think, felt bad for some dumb high school kid who got really panicky. So that was a really big get out of jail free card for me, for sure. Who gets the point on that one?
Yours, you didn't even
nothing.
No consequences.
No.
I'm gonna say you
with
win
the
that
exception
one
of
for sure.
the panic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I beat you at this game.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take that as a win. Few and far between, so I gotta own it. So this whole conversation about, hey, where do you draw that line between having compassion, maybe showing that grace, and when do you just let the consequences come down on your kids? It's a tough one, and it actually has come from an incident that took place earlier this year in February. So a story came out of Chicago that an armed gunman held up a train conductor, got away with about $100 from this train conductor, and there was surveillance and pictures that were taken, but the problem was that the individual was wearing a mask. So I mean, he was definitely covered up. You were not going to be able to identify who this guy was. But in a matter of hours of putting this out on social media, as well as I think some news stations, the perpetrator came forward, turned himself in. Now, why did he turn himself in? Well, it's because his mom saw him on these pictures, knew his backpack, knew his clothes, knew the way he walked, knew the way he carried himself, and although he was covered with a mask, she knew that was her boy. And so she said, son, you are going to turn yourself in, and you're going to deal with these consequences. So let me ask you.
Mom.
Let me ask you, do you think mom handled this well? Again, understand, in the United States, armed robbery is a huge deal to the point where a lot of people are sentenced to 20 plus years for armed robbery. Did mom make the right choice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, let me push you a little bit further.
I don't have kids, so
imagine that you have a child now, Josh. Little Josh Jr. has held someone up, and it could be a 20-year sentence. Your kid behind bars. Would you act the way that this mother acted upon the situation?
I hope so. I hope that I can say that, because honestly, what's the fear, right? They go and do it again, or they get themselves killed. Because mom could be doing this almost out of mercy. Like, if your kid's doing armed robbery, it takes. In this country where there are 1 million people carrying, that kid could easily have been shot and killed. Yeah. That kid could get involved with other people who are bad, that could kill him as well. I think, in a way, you could spin this in the mom's head as a way of protecting your son.
No, I think that's a good way to look at it too. Just a little bit more of the background on it. He was in his early 20s, still is. This just happened in February. College student. The story goes, and this is what he shared with his attorney, and the attorney shared it with the lawyer the judge. And the judge had a hard line as well. So he's trying to get bail, and he explains the story was that this young man was hungry, he didn't have any money, poor college student, and he just got really foolish and thought this would be a quick way to get some money, to get some food. And the lawyer explained to the judge, hey, keep in mind, when you were a college student, when you were maybe not poor and didn't have enough food, keep that in mind. And the judge said, you know what? I do remember when I was a college student, didn't have a lot of money, and I wouldn't have dreamt of actually, solving this problem through armed robbery. And she denies bail. So what do you think? Did the judge deal with that in a fair manner, or was that maybe a little too harsh? Consequence as opposed to compassion. Where do you think the judge was at?
So let's talk about what bail is. You get out before the trial.
Yeah.
And really that gives people a chance to say, I mean, especially if they know they're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Take their amends, enjoy some things before.
Sure.
I think that kid deserves at least. Is he a flight risk? Probably not.
Yeah.
So give him bail.
Yeah.
At least that's where I lean. I don't know how you lean or not.
Yeah, and this is why we chose the story, because on both sides, it's like, okay, we've got a mom who maybe actually showing compassion by having her son turn himself in, and then maybe a judge that took it a little too far. So where do we as parents, youth pastors, teachers, where do we draw that line? Yeah. I'm curious in your life, if you had to lean one way or the other, do you typically lean towards compassion, mercy, and just saying, hey, you'll do better next time? Or are you a hardliner, you did the crime, you gotta pay the time?
I think you know the answer already for me. I hardcore lean compassion, mercy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do have a sense, and we're called to, as Christians, have a sense of justice. And honestly, the way I just explained that situation with the mom is how I've had to deal with things. Because there's been times where I've let kids get away with pushing me too far, pushing other volunteers too far, doing things that they should not be doing or saying things they should not be saying, and just letting it go, saying God forgives me for a lot, I'm going to forgive them for a lot.
Yeah.
But not telling them, hey, this is wrong, or not explaining, you're hurting our relationship.
Right.
Giving them at least a little bit of consequence.
Yeah.
Denies them from the ability to learn from it. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, I've noticed that when I'm angry, I'm all about you got to deal with the consequences. It's go time. You knew the standard. You failed. But when I'm not angry, when I've had a chance to process and really kind of think through it, then I find myself opening up to all kinds of mercy and no, I'm compassionate. So sometimes it just comes down to where I'm at emotionally, which may not be necessarily be a healthy thing. But going back to this mom, I think both of us, at least as we're hearing the story, agree that she chose a good line to go down. And it's one of those things that I don't really see that a whole lot modeled in the parents that I've worked with in the past. I think as I look at parents, there seems to be a shielding that so many parents have of their kids and the consequences of their poor choices. Yeah. To the point where I know your wife's a teacher, but I hear story after story of parents who are actually, siding with their children as opposed to the teacher, even though that student is completely disruptive. Yeah. And one person is clearly the authority figure, and yet they're undermining that person's authority. Or, for example, these parents that may feel guilty that, man, my kids are so stressed out, and and they just start making all these excuses for their children's bad behavior. It's don't make excuses for their bad behavior. And so this woman seems to be the exception to the rule. Here's where we're headed, though. Here's the big idea. Again, the question is, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? And the big thought that we're going to encourage you guys to have is, instead of maybe removing consequences, instead improve the consequences. So how do you improve consequences? I think it really comes down to something that your folks modeled really well from the stories that you were sharing, is to walk with your kids through the consequence. You're not removing it, but you're improving it by walking with them through it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you even do that with your own students as you're trying to say, hey, if we continue down this path, this is what the consequence is, and you let them sit in it. I'll give you some examples of how I try to live this out with my kids, and I'll see if you've got some stories or examples too.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we do when it comes to natural consequences of poor choices is we will give extra chores. One of the things that my kids hate doing is the laundry, yard work. I mean, the list is really, really long. And so after warnings, it's guess what, buddy? You know, like the 5 piles of laundry, that's now your responsibility. No one's going to help you in that. Now, that's the consequence. But what I'll oftentimes find myself doing is stepping in to that with them and saying, hey, let's do this together. Like, I'll usually let them start, and then I'll step in and I'll say, hey, let's do this together. And then in that, we can talk about what happened. I'm having that conversation of, hey, you know what, you're better than this. You know what you should be doing. I'm always going to stand with you. Like, you know, I still love you, but I love you enough that you still need to walk through the difficulty, because we don't want you ever making those choices again. Another example will be, you know, my kids love playing video games on the weekends. And that's their window of opportunity. And so if they're getting out of line, it's like, sorry, no video games this weekend. But rather than just letting them be bored all weekend, sometimes I'll step in and I'll say, hey, well, not sometimes, like all the time, I'll just step in and it's like, hey, how about we go play ball in the backyard? Now, do they really want to play ball with me, or do they want to play video games? They want to play video games. But I'm stepping into that consequence with them and improving the consequence by spending that extra time with them that we might not have done otherwise, or some other event that, hey, let's go check out this, or let's go serve someone in this way. So that's, again, I'm not removing the consequence, I'm improving it by walking with them through it.
Absolutely.
Any examples that you can think of?
So I do just want to say one, specifically, because it just immediately came to mind, but there was a moment where, you know, I was very forgetful, in high school especially. Even this morning, I left I brought the equipment that we needed in order to record this, and I left one tiny little cord that is essential in order to do the audio right, and had to drive home to get it. But one of those times that was really brutal was we lived like a mile from McDonald's, and I went with some cash and got myself a cheeseburger or whatever. Didn't put my seatbelt back on, and as I was pulling out of the parking lot, got pulled over for that. Well, on top of that, I didn't have my license with me because I left it at home, so I got busted on that. And then on top of that, in a timely manner, I could not pull out my insurance and registration because I'd never been pulled over before.
How much time did he give you?
Oh my gosh, at maybe like 2 minutes or so.
And
but then he came back.
That wasn't fast enough.
He was like, you got to have it on hand, and went and wrote me a ticket. Well, with that, you have to go to court in order to handle that, because there was a lot of different little mini things. And I obviously had my license, I had my insurance, and all that stuff. So it was an easy court thing.
Sure.
But I had to miss some things that were important to me, and I was really mad about that. But my dad took the day off and was because he knew I was going to be really nervous, and sat with me and did the whole thing, like went through the whole day with me. We had lunch. Like, it actually turned into like a cool day with my dad, even though this was a tough like consequence of me being dumb and learning like you need to be more responsible. Does that make sense?
But your dad didn't step in and solve that problem for you.
Exactly.
What he did is he walked with you through it, and that's improving the consequence. That's
and I found out later, and it makes me so upset, but that if you have your insurance and you have your license and you have that charge, you can just go to the courthouse whenever and let them know. But they didn't tell me that because they wanted me to learn from it. And so, like, another example of that.
Okay.
But anyway, is this where you want?
Yeah.
So there's one other story that I think is actually kind of similar but much higher stakes.
Sure.
There's a story of this. Is he in high school or is he in college?
College, yeah.
College age student who was in trouble for a lot with the law, very similar to the situation that we just discussed with the mom. And the dad, there's this picture of this dad every step of the way from the arrest all the way up to when the verdict was given. He was with his son, and even in the moment where they ask the perpetrator to like stand up, the dad stood with him and hung his head low because as if to say like I'm with him, I did this with him, I'm
standing right
embarrassed
beside
with him.
Yep.
And was supportive the whole way, but never took away the consequence. Not that he really had a choice, but
it improves.
It improved the situation.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna let you learn from this,
Yeah.
but I'm also gonna show you compassion and love. And it reminds me of the Micah 6:8 verse where God says, "What have I asked of you but to love, to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly." Like just modeling that in your parenting is widely important.
And what would be, even the danger of consistently shielding, your children, consistently trying to remove those consequences as you're thinking through and maybe even seeing examples. And mean, what's the consequences of those things?
I don't have any articles or anything that like say this, but at least in me, consequences have taught me empathy because if I see other people walking through something that I've walked through in the past, facing consequences, I'm going to show more mercy. It teaches me, I don't want to say self-reliance, but it teaches me how to deal with problems.
Some sort of responsibility.
Exactly.
Sure.
You're not going to be with your kids forever. And I think that that's the phrase that all parents hear, but they never like apply it. But you need to realize that like there's going to be a point where they're going to be in your shoes learning how to deal with a boss that might be asking too much of them, or learning how to deal with a husband or wife when they've done something wrong and they have to fess up for it and deal with the consequence. And if you are constantly just saying, "Oh, it's okay, I'll do this for you," they're never learning that, and there's even the fear that they never know how to accept consequence. That they just constantly lie, or they just constantly deflect. Like the students who do not have consequences that they face will never ever accept that they did it themselves until you say, "It's not a problem, I forgive you," and then they'll be like, "Okay, well maybe I did it." But like,
they play the victim card. No, it's you, it's them. I'm not the issue. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it goes back to your sermon on Sunday too, with the idea that integrity is doing the right thing because it's the right thing,
even when it costs you.
Yeah, even when it costs you. And if you've not ever had to pay the cost of your consequences, integrity will not be something in your kid. I don't know.
I think even just to kind of look at the life of Jesus too, he stepped in and he took this burden of our sin. Sin was going to cause death. Like that's there. It's going to happen. And he took that on himself, certainly. But there are still natural consequences to our choices that we do have to go through. And so parents, as you're thinking through, okay, where's that line? I think there will be times, there will be moments where extending that grace, extending that forgiveness, letting them off the hook, it's probably appropriate. But it needs to be seen as a gift. And I think that's what we even see in the Gospels. I mean, God coming from heaven to take on that punishment for us, that is a gift that we did not deserve. It is the exception. It is not the rule. And so as parents, yes, you're going to extend the grace and you're going to send the forgiveness, but it shouldn't be the rule. It should be the exception.
I don't know if this is necessarily, maybe this is overstepping with it, but I mean, and say if you agree or not with the students that you've seen, but I think students who have parents who teach them right from wrong and let them face consequences have a deeper understanding of the grace of God and are more thankful for it than students who don't. They just expect it.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
I don't think I've ever thought about that, but yes, just in the moment as I'm thinking through it, I would probably agree with you.
Yeah. So you have an opportunity to even teach your kids about the understanding of how good God's grace is by walking through consequences with them.
That's good.
But
any final thoughts?
That was my final thought.
All right. Final thought is this for me. Hey, when your kids are going to make mistakes, because they will make mistakes, we're challenging. Be with them, walk with them, be behind them. Don't remove the consequences. Instead, improve the consequences by, again, walking with them. Until next time, don't forget, life is so much better with God, community, and purpose.
See you guys.